Welcome back. This time we're talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane, the unexpected possible sequel to Cloverfield, the 2008 monster movie from producer J.J. Abrams. This is a movie that 2 months ago no one knew existed. So I have to give J.J. Abrams and his crew credit for bypassing all of the Hollywood gossip magazines and websites to be able to create something that we didn't know was coming. But is it really a sequel to Cloverfield? And that was the question going in, and that was the question I had through most of the movie. And I have to say, this could be considered a spoiler, and I'm very anti-spoilers, but I honestly think you need to get this out of the way so you can actually enjoy the movie. So if you really don't want to know how or if these two movies are connected, you might want to skip ahead a few seconds here. Okay, here we go. It's safe. There is absolutely no story connection between the two movies. I'll get into that. I'll get more into that later. But let's get that out of the way. Okay, if you were trying to skip ahead, it's safe now. So 10 Cloverfield Lane is essentially a movie about a young woman named Michelle, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who you probably have seen in movies such as A Good Day to Die Hard, as well as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This is a young woman who is living in a large city in Louisiana. I believe it's New Orleans. It could be Baton Rouge. I don't know my Louisiana geography well enough to be able to identify the city on the few exterior shots that we get. But anyway, she is in the opening scene. We see her apparently breaking up with her boyfriend and leaving town. Unfortunately, she doesn't get very far. She gets into a car accident, and when she wakes up, she finds herself in some kind of bunker and chained to a bed. The only person she sees is a man named Harold, played by John Goodman, who says that he has saved her life, not only from the accident, but by allowing her to be in his bunker, because apparently something very bad has happened. Just exactly what, he isn't very specific on. He soon finds out there's a third person in the bunker, a young man named Emmett, played by John Gallagher Jr. You might recognize him from the TV series Newsroom. But beyond that, it's a mystery. Is there really a disaster out there? Or is this some kind of scheme made up by Howard to keep her prisoner? And that's the movie. That's the mystery. That's the linchpin of this movie. Is he telling the truth? Is he insane? And as we've learned in other movies, they're not always mutually exclusive. And this is actually a really good mystery, horror, thriller movie. A movie like this survives on you not knowing for sure which side of the coin is heads or tails, if that's your preference. But every time you think, you're like, okay, this is the truth, we get a little bit that throws us back the other way. And then when we get a little comfortable, okay, now we know what's going on, we get tossed back the other way. And the movie really is paced in such a way that we never feel truly comfortable for a long period of time. The movie is about an hour and 43 minutes, and it uses that time quite well. It, like I said, sets up this story, does not show all of its cards, shows little tidbits here and there to keep us guessing all the way, basically until the last about 15-20 minutes or so. This is essentially a three-character play, and all three actors deliver great performances, especially John Goodman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Those two are amazing in this movie. John Goodman is about as creepy as I've ever seen him. He could be this benevolent person who is just trying to survive what he believes is the end of the world, but at the same time, he's still a creepy SOB. That's all I can say, is he plays creepy so well. Between solid story writing, good dialogue, great acting, it really just kind of drives us all the way into the end. Now, like a lot of movies like this, where you have that sort of mystery, something similar that I said in my print review of The Witch, which is something I haven't had a chance to do a video on yet. These kind of movies where you have that mystery, one way or the other, or possibly even more options than that, when you do get the final reveal, you oftentimes can feel let down. Now, in the case of The Witch, a lot of people were, from what I've read. I was not one of them. I love that movie. In the case of this movie, again, I think a lot of people may not like the last 15 minutes. For me, I thought it worked. Obviously they could have gone a lot of different ways. It went the way that they decided to go with it. And again, I thought it worked for the character development that had been built up to that point. So I really didn't have a huge problem with it. Again, my main issue with this movie is its connections or lack thereof with the original Cloverfield. So all in all, as a movie, trying to be this tense, claustrophobic thriller, 10 Cloverfield Lane, I think, succeeds quite well. It was an enjoyable movie. Again, had great acting, good storytelling, and if you're into that kind of movie, definitely check it out. I'm going to go ahead and do my rating in just now, but if you stick around at the end, I'm going to get into a little bit of discussion about the Cloverfield connection. I may do a longer video on that later, but for now, if you don't want spoilers as far as potential connections to Cloverfield, without spoiling this movie, stick around. But as far as this movie goes, I'm going to give it a B. Again, it was a fun movie, and you should have a good time with it. And unless you're sticking around to hear a little bit more about Cloverfield, I'll see you at the movies. Alrighty. If you're sticking around, then you want to hear a little bit more about the Cloverfield connection. Again, I'm not going to spoil the storyline and the plot of 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I will say, as far as I can tell, there is no story connection whatsoever to Cloverfield. I was looking for... I spent most of the movie looking for those connections, and that's why I'm saying this now. So if you go into 10 Cloverfield Lane, you can just sit back and enjoy what is a solid movie, and not spend your time looking for those connections like I did. And like in the opening scene, when we first see her cell phone, my first thought was, oh, that's a smartphone. That's a lot newer than 2008. That can't... So we're now past the events of Cloverfield. And then as we meet Howard and his conspiracy theories and everything else, the fact that he never mentions that New York City was attacked by a giant monster and then it's apparently either nuked or high explosived to rubble, this is obviously a different world. There's no connection to that. So it's a little disappointing. Again, I could go into a lot. I can see if people are really angry about this, like they feel like they've been duped, I completely understand. For me, I do feel a little duped. You know, the main reason I went to this movie was to see what the connection would be to Cloverfield, which was a movie I really enjoyed when I went to see it, and when I rewatched it. If you've seen my spoiler review for that I posted this weekend, it's a movie I liked. I was really hoping to see where this was going to take that story, and it didn't, obviously. As far as I can tell, and I haven't looked at any post-release interviews with J.J. Abrams to see if this is the case. I know I read one quote pre-release where he said this was like a blood relative. And what I can see is this is sort of similar to like an anthology, like a short story anthology, where you have a lot of like stories in one collection. And I could see how the original Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane could be considered two very similar movies, at least in spirit, and how that would be the Cloverfield connection. And in that case, I'm relatively fine with it. I'm glad I went to go see it. It was an enjoyable movie. It might not have been a movie that I would just jumped out and gone to see otherwise. So I'm glad I did go to see it, but I did leave feeling somewhat duped. So if you are going to go see 10 Cloverfield Lane, again, I recommend you do. It is a good movie, but just know there is no in-movie connection, as far as I can tell, to the original Cloverfield. So I think this video is long enough as it is. So I've already said it to those that have already left, but for those that stuck around, until next time, I'll see you at the movies.